Tonight, our major focus is what has been described as the nation's rising debt profile. The People's Democratic Party's candidate and a former Vice President, Atiku Abubakar, believes the borrowings of the nation is unsustainable. In a statement today from his media advisor, Paul Ibe, Mr. Atiku says he wants to draw the attention of stakeholders in the Nigerian project to the existential threat affecting Nigeria and for which the General Buhari-led administration has chosen to ignore. Atiku Abubakar has asked for immediate action to address Nigeria's unsustainable debt burden. He made reference to the situation under the Obasanjo regime, where he chaired the National Economic Council in 2006 and paid off Nigeria's entire debt. Atiku Abubakar says he wants to sound a note of warning that the deeper we go into unsustainable debt, the more of our independence that is lost to our creditors. Let's get talking, everyone. Tonight is going to be very sensitive, but look, we're going to get straight to the matter. It's about the future of the country. Is it true what the former vice president is saying? Because what he has made some drop some figures. Are those figures true? Well, sometimes when we have this kind of knotty economic issues, we call on Mr. Muda Yusuf. He's the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you very much.
And also from our Abuja studio is Sheon Bisuga, who is a public affairs analyst. He's going to be tilting towards the Buhari government, hoping that what they are doing is right. And also Dr. Kach Ononuju, a member of the PDP and economist. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on tonight. Let me begin, perhaps, with Dr. Kach Ononuju. This is another, it looks to some people of the APC stock believing that this is some kind of political criticism or opposition talks when you say what we are borrowing is not sustainable. Economists and some development experts will tell you that you cannot sustain the development, especially those very big infrastructure projects and development, without borrowing. Let's get the conversation started.
Thank you very much. Well, if you look at what we've been having, we've had an astronomical rise in our debt profile without any corresponding activity that actually has shown any positive to the general population. The economy is still depressed. We have not seen any kind of stimulus. We have seen spending on things that just do not matter. You just said it last week. The government spent on Ruga, and that was not budgeted for. There was no budgeting for such things. Why would we be spending 12 billion? Nigerians are all very hungry. You are spending 12 billion national money on a program to import refugees that is not agreed to by the governors nor the office of the vice president. This is the kind of wanton spending, reckless spending that we believe does not augur well for the Nigerian economy. Apart from that, you had what we got from the National Office of Statistics, that our debt profile is right now risen well over 25 trillion. What are we going to do? What did you do with all that? You have taken so much debt, the economy is still depressed. We are now running into 2 recessions within a 4-year span. This is not proper. Nigerians cannot continue like this. Take example, the spending on Ruga that was not approved by law, not known by any government. This is the kind of things that are going on all across this country.
All right, Dr. Kach Ononuju, I want us to hit the point on the nail on the head so that we can be able to give some clarity. These are some of the figures coming in. It's been from some figures that have come in from the Office of the Statistics General, saying that our debt has risen in there from 2018, rose a marginal increase of 2.3% and risen by 560 billion naira. Largely because of these factors. But look at how it has risen from 2016 up until 2019. This is perhaps how it looks like. But look at it. Before we get to that, this is what it was in 2018. At December 31, 2018, to 24.387 trillion and is written to 24.947 trillion. But the APC will tell you that things have gotten so bad under the PDP government, and that is what has led us into this situation. Mr. Bisuga, what is your take? Can this be sustainable with what we have seen so far? Are we sliding into a bigger trouble for the future?
So, Sheon, thank you for having me. And you see, it's proper for us to put things in perspective. You understand? When we talk debt profile, we need to talk about facts and figures and not fiction. Fiction doesn't work it. So in 2015, before this government came on, we had a debt profile of 63 billion. And from 2015 to 2019, it's just increased to 78 billion. Give or take, that's like 15 billion borrowing. While previous government borrowed 63 billion, and they did nothing with it. Of the 15 billion that has been borrowed, you can see the capital projects. You can see the second Niger Bridge, you can see Lagos-Ibadan Rail, you can see Lagos-Ibadan Road. And that tells you that this is a government that knows what it wants to do with borrowing, not a government that had oil at over $100 and did nothing with it. You know, they were just squandering the money. We had so much money, and yes, we were still borrowing money. It was senseless. If you look at our debt to our GDP ratio, compare it with other countries across the world, we start at 27%. That is way better than Russia, it's better than New Zealand, it's better than United Arab Emirates, it's better than Saudi Arabia. Go and check it. So you see, when we are talking about borrowing, we need to also look at the GDP and need to look at the capital project. Meanwhile, what has this government borrowed for? There's been a budget deficit from the past. You have to refinance loans that were taken from the previous government, and of course the capital project, like I mentioned. So you need to understand that, see, this has been the most sensible borrowing we've had since democracy. This has been borrowing that can be accounted for. This has been borrowing that can be seen. The rails are there, the roads are there.
Just hold on, pause for a moment. Pause for a moment. We're talking economics now, and statistics is very important. And so when the politicians talk on both sides of the divide, Mr. Yusuf, give us a sense of what is happening. From what we see, this is what former Vice President is saying. He said that it has doubled, and that when he was in office, they were able to pay all the debt of the nation. But this is what we have on our hand, and this is what it has risen to 560 billion between just 2018 and 2019 March. Are we in trouble?
Well, definitely there is a cause to worry. Because if you look at the 2019 budget, for instance, you had an estimated revenue of about 7 trillion. The debt service component of the budget is about 2 trillion. The recurrent component of the budget is about 4.7 trillion. So by the time you add the debt service to the recurrent, you've practically exhausted the revenue. So we find ourselves
in essence, Mr. Yusuf,
yes,
our debt servicing budget is competing with our capital project.
Of course. It's almost at par. And at the end of the day, by the time you look at what is effectively released for capital expenditure, it's even likely to be less than what we have in the budget. So clearly, we need to look at these issues more seriously and in a non-partisan way, because we are talking about the sustainability of this economy. And when you have this kind of situation, you deal with it from both the expenditure side and the revenue side, because we are talking about fiscal sustainability of an economy. So we need to look at those variables on the expenditure side that we need to tinker with, because we can't be continuing to run an economy where by the time you spend on recurrent and the bulk of that is on personnel costs, by the time you service debt, your revenue is exhausted. That's not sustainable.
Is it true that we have no tangible evidence of development to show for our debt? Is it true from 2015?
Well, you look at it from the way the budget is structured. Of course, you can see a couple of projects. We have the railways, we have the airport project, and things like that. But again, if you look at it within the context of the budget, you have a budget that is almost about 75% recurrent. There's a limit to what you can expect.
The president said that he will set up a cabinet Is that a fear of what could also affect our standing economically speaking? Because look at what happened in 2015. A lot of people, you had also criticized at the time that if you don't set up early enough, you have a problem.
Yes, it's also a matter for concern. Because if you don't have a cabinet in place, for instance, at the ministerial level, there's a limit to what the PAMSEC can do. There are some decisions that only a sitting minister can take. So to that extent, even at the ministerial level, some of the business aspects of the business of government will be slowed down. There are also decisions that can only be taken by the Federal Executive Council when it comes to major projects, and there are some major decisions that only the Federal Executive Council can take. So if you don't have the Federal Executive Council in place, you cannot take such decisions.
And we are
to
at a
that
critical
extent,
point where critical economic decisions need to be made.
Need to be taken. We're even talking of the budget. We are talking about implementation of the budget. There are some projects that need to be executed. There are contracts that need to be awarded. And we have some critical officers that need to do this. The ministers are part of this officer. The Federal Executive Council is also part of this framework. So if these things are not in place, even the implementation of the 2019 budget will also suffer a setback.
All right.
So generally, I think it has implication for the speed at which things are done. Yes,
no, the president said he's that kind of man that wants to take it easy from his experience. So, but let's look at this quickly before I go to Dr. Catch Ononuju. Dr. Catch Ononuju, some economists will look at these indicators and say, well, maybe we're not doing as bad as we should, as critics are saying. If you look at perhaps our external reserve, that should give us some level of joy that we've accrued some more money externally. If you look at, for example, oil production and the price and what we have made of it, a lot of people will say, well, there's been some credit to this government. If you look also at perhaps the rate of inflation, things are looking up. That's what economists will tell you. But from this perspective, are you still on the side that we are still in trouble? Are you impressed with what this government has done in terms of infrastructure?
Well, let me match the figures. One, if in 4 years we are not still having a depressed economy, what that means is nothing has actually been tangibly done to help the recession. Why? If they double up to 12 to 13 trillion that's been borrowed had actually been allowed to help in monetary expansion, you would have seen stimulus. So how come we have all that money and yet the economy doesn't seem to be stimulated? Everything you see are just rhetorics. Secondly, look at let's be led by the fact of the budget. If recurrent expenditure is 75% and then you put the debt borrowing, you have nothing for capital projects. All they give you are rhetorics. If there were a capital project, we would have seen some quality of stimulations in this economy. So because of no stimulus, the economy is still as depressed as it is. All we've been doing are juggling figures. Ask Nigerians, are you better off today than you were some years ago? Now, I put that if you're not good as you are today compared to 4 years ago, look at what the government are doing. There is recklessness in spending. The very first spending that this government has done since it came in today is building Rugas. Now, Rugas are not there for Nigerians. It is a program for imported aliens. Is that something a government that is responsible should be doing? That's one. What about the other places where the waste has gone in? Our suspicion, our belief, is that the borrowings are borrowed simply for the money to be looted. That's why you do not see them put into the economy. That's why you do not have no stimulus. There is no monetary expansion, and the people continue to suffer.
Let me allow Mr.
There's no need for us to use rhetoric.
And my question,
our people.
Yeah, good. Let me allow him to react to what he has said. And also, look at what Mr. Emefiele, the CBN governor, said last year. He did warn the nation that we are approaching the pre-2005 Paris Club levels. And that was a level where we had high debt profile, but it was cleared sometimes after 2006. With all of this, Mr. Bisuga, do we still need to caution, or we still need to go ahead borrowing in the manner in which we're going?
So, I'm not sure that there's any evidence to the effect that we want to go on borrowing. The point is this. Monies have been borrowed by this government and they've been used for projects that we've seen. Lagos-Ibadan Expressway was a campaign promise for 16 years. That never happened. The same thing for Lagos-Benin. And the same thing for the rails that you see. When Nigeria start taking trains, see, these things didn't just come. It's not a mirage. It's not from a cartoon. These things are policies and programs of the government that have been put in place and that everyone can see. You can go to your airport now and you are happy to be there. It didn't just happen overnight. If monies were borrowed, these monies were used. They were used very judiciously. Unlike before, where you just had money in circulation and people just kept on spending, even though we had our crude oil over $100. You understand?
The question is that fine borrowing and the projects are ongoing, though some people say they've not felt it, but are they sustainable? Are we treading or sliding into a bigger trouble? That is the question here.
No, we are not going into any bigger trouble. As a matter of fact, like you said earlier, we are just in the next level. So all these things will bring us to where? Bring us to the infrastructural development that we didn't have. It will bring us to more jobs. It will bring us to even a safer economy. Because the thing is, once you have trains and you have roads and everything are easy to fly, you find out that everything just comes together and then you have that development that we didn't have in the past. So what it's going to do, this borrowings that has been made by the government, is that it's going to make Nigeria a very safe haven for investors, and then the FDI figures will continue to increase because people know that the infrastructures are there, electricity is improving, the roads are there, the rails are there.
Mr. Yusuf, to give us some parting words tonight on the program on what should do the warning of this man, or we should look at what futuristically the plan of this man in taking the nation, like he promised, to the next level. If you look at these indicators, at something that should put smiles on the faces of Nigerians.
Yes, it is very important that we create an environment that will stimulate more investment. Because clearly, the government doesn't have the resources to deal with all these issues. Infrastructure deficit in this economy is quite huge. And given the size of the resources available to government, and given even the structure of the budget itself, we need a lot of inflow of private sector capital, both from within and from outside this economy. And to make that happen, we need to create the environment for that to happen, from a policy perspective, from a regulatory perspective, from an institutional perspective. You know, all these things are necessary to inspire the kind of confidence to attract capital, investment, so that you can create jobs. Because if you have more investment, you have more revenue, and be able to deal with some of this. And of course, we need to deal with the expenditure side. There's still a lot of work to be done to reform the expenditure. And more importantly, we need to reform urgently our oil and gas sector. There's a lot of revenue, a lot of investment, a lot of value that you can unlock in that sector.
Absolutely.
Very important.
Mr. Muda Yusuf, always a pleasure having you talk to us. And I must sincerely thank Dr. Kachi Ononuchu. Always interesting to have you. And Mr. Seun Bisuga, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Those are the figures you need to keep your eyes on. The conversation may continue in the coming days over this warning. But that's our show for tonight. And the eyes have it. Whatever you do, make sure that you're on the side of the people. Bye for now, everyone.